Welcome to the FiveStack. I'm Dean. That's Zev. This is
Hello.
episode 4 this week. Every Thursday. Is it Thursday? It's
It's
Thursday.
Thursday. It's been 4, yeah. 4
Yeah. And
episodes
the
this
only
week.
reason I know it's Thursday is because, unlike you, I'm a massive Leaf fan. Leafs Senators tonight. We were just talking about it before we got on. It's game 6. Leafs can never close a series. Hopefully they close it out tonight. They're in Ottawa. And I'm going over to a buddy's place to watch it tonight. And kind of a little networking thing with a bunch of other dudes. And the only reason why I know it's Thursday is because I looked at my thing and I thought it was Wednesday this morning. It's like, oh my God, I got this update. It's like, you got to be at this game on Thursday. So that's how I know what day of the week it is. Otherwise, I have no idea what day of the week it
Well,
is.
I can assure you it's Thursday, and I can assure you that I don't find out what day of the week it is by any game of any sport ever, because I'm not really very good at sports. It's not my thing.
Well, it's somebody mean it doesn't matter if you're good at sports. You can still enjoy the drama. Like, have you not been to a Leaf game in
I
your
haven't
life?
to a Leaf game. It's quite violent. You know, the way they smash against the barriers there, it's a little much. But also,
Sports?
I don't
You mean the hitting and the body checking and the
all that
cross
stuff.
checking and the
That-
fighting?
It's
You
too
don't
much
like
for
it?
me. It's too much
You don't
for
like
me.
violence? I'm just finding something out about you today. What do you
I'm not-
don't like it? We're
I'm
watching
not a
two
violent
dudes just
person
stand
in
there and
general.
kick
No,
the shit out of each other for 30 seconds, and then give each other high fives on the way to the
Look,
penalty
firstly,
box.
it's a physical game for wusses because they're all wearing this padding. And I grew up playing rugby. That's a real sport.
Fair.
We have real contact. This sport here where they're on ice, I don't know, they're skating and then they bash into each other. I don't get it.
Well, the idea is to hit the other guy harder so he doesn't get up, so you can take the puck, and you're down a couple of men going the other way with the puck, right? That's
Oh,
the
that's
whole
the
idea,
other
take
thing.
guys out of the
Is
play.
this weird thing, this weird territory gaining? Is that how you play it? I don't know. I know.
What do you
Day
mean territory? Like you mean your defensive end,
is that football?
offensive
That's
end, neutral
football.
zone?
That's
Yeah,
football.
no, it's hockey too.
Oh,
Yeah.
tell you. Okay. And then this time.
You really don't know anything about
power
sports,
play
do you?
thing.
Oh, good.
I mean,
yeah.
I've had to pretend to know about sports at various incarnations in my life when I've had to like read newscasts and sportscasts,
Yeah.
and I was like, so you sometimes have to pretend, and I've
Yeah.
pretended okay, but I don't even
Hopefully
know.
you get it right. Like
this-
and every person in media has done that, right? Where
Yeah.
you're given a script or you got to report on something you clearly know nothing about. It's just words on a piece of
Yeah.
paper, and you're like, "Hope I nailed it." At the end of it, chances are you probably didn't, but that's okay.
I probably didn't. I mean, especially because where the Senators from? I should
Really? Ottawa? No, you know the Ottawa Senators, NHL. Have you heard of it? No,
I've heard of the NHL. Yeah,
Battle of Ontario playoffs, playoff
It's a
hockey.
Battle of Ontario. It's happening tonight.
That's what they.
The Battle of Ontario, and I didn't even know. I'm in the middle of it, and I didn't even know.
You didn't know what was going on, dude. You live right fucking downtown Toronto. This place is a zoo in the playoffs. Like
all
people
right,
with
all
the
right.
car flags and the wraps. You don't see it. You know,
Is that why they make that noise? I wondered what it was about. Welcome to the FiveStack, everybody. It's 3:10 now, and we're counting down the top 5 stories of the day with Dean Blundell and Zev Shalev. Dean Blundell from the deanblundell.substack.com. Substack.
Hi.
And I'm from narrative.org. We have some big stories to cover today. And I think at number 5, we just have to cover off this really. I was going to do a different order, but let's do number 5 is Mike Waltz. Recently fired National Security Advisor Mike Waltz was rehired this afternoon by Donald Trump. This time he's being appointed apparently or nominated to become the UN ambassador. So having been, ceremoniously shown to the door on Air Force One, apparently, for his, handling of the signal chat crisis and the revelations of the Yemen, war plans on that signal chat. Now he's being reappointed or renominated by the president as his UN ambassador. And then on top of that, Marco Rubio, who's already got kind of a big job as the Secretary of State, is being given a dual role of both Secretary of State and National Security Advisor.
That should go well.
I think the last one who did something like that was Kissinger. I think that's where it went last time. They like to control both ends of that spectrum. It's both a
Kissinger,
huge
by the
job.
way, widely regarded as one of the worst human beings ever to infest government in the United States. Yes,
one of the worst people alive. Probably, well, he's not alive anymore, but is he? I don't think so.
No, he's dead. He died.
Yeah. So it's fascinating that you can really fail your way upwards at the Trump cabinet. You can, do the worst thing in the world by revealing the classified top secrets of your government, on a signal chat on your unencrypted phone, and then you can get a reward for that by getting a plum job in New York at the UN, being the American ambassador, because they don't have a lot of people, so they gotta They got to fit you in where they can.
Well, you're moving the idiot chess pieces around the board, right? You know how hard it was for him to get like people like Mr. Waltz into the position that he was in, or how hard it was for him to get all the different cabinet members, through the nomination process. It's like he's like, man, I don't trust anybody because I am a dotard and I've surrounded myself with all these other morons. If I'm going to move a guy out of a gig, better move him over here so I can continue to protect myself, which is, very unlike Donald Trump, because usually when he would fire someone, if you remember, he'd fire someone remember when he fired Sean Spicer, which is my favorite Trump firing of all time. He's like, yeah, he sucks. And they never saw the light of day after that. But the circle around Trump and the inability for him to, he doesn't want anybody to pierce the veil. He doesn't want anybody in and around MAGA, the cabal that he's created of sycophants that, the cabinet meeting the other day was hilarious, by the way. It was like, dear leader, you're the greatest. I love you so much. You saved 228 million lives from dying of fentanyl. Like, there's only so many of those fucking morons to go around. So
there are already so many.
He needed to recycle Mike Waltz from the position he was wholly unqualified for and move him into another position and run interference for another position he's wholly unqualified for. That's kind of what you get here.
I mean, the UN ambassador is a very significant role. It's not one of those things that should be thrown away, obviously, because they don't consider the United Nations being very important. But nevertheless, it says a cabinet level position, if I'm not mistaken, maybe just under that. But still, this is a very significant role, especially with what's going on in the world right now. And not to have a significant voice there with any sort of credibility in the diplomatic world is just going to mean Russia gets away with a lot more, because they're going to be able to ride over the United States in everything that they do at the UN.
But isn't that the idea?
Yes, that is the idea. I'm sure that's the idea. The other thing, which is really kind of stunning, is Hegseth, who should be fired for this ridiculous thing, because it's Hegseth who actually took the war secrets and revealed them publicly. Yeah. He is not
and shared them with his wife, by the way.
And, a separate chat.
Hey, honey, I'm late at the office. Guess what I'm fucking doing right now?
Yeah.
Check out longitude, latitude, this number.
Yeah.
And log on to my secret BlackBerry at home. This place is gonna be fucking lit. Yeah. Bombing the shit out of the Houthis, honey, and I'll be home for a glass of wine and a scotch with you later. We'll get
check out the big rockets, And so that guy is still in his job. They haven't removed him from his position because he's obviously a spectacular failure, and this is probably what they're trying to get at, is to put as many spectacular failures in positions as possible. And this one is another one. I mean, it sounds. You laugh at this stuff because we have to laugh at it, but it is, it's beyond comical, it's beyond serious, it's beyond catastrophic that we don't have serious leadership at the Pentagon and we don't have serious leadership in the NSA. I mean, these are very important positions. They basically run the world, and we don't have anyone of value there. And Marco Rubio is not going to do it,
No, Marco Rubio can't do anything. He can't even be an accurate, good Secretary of State. There's rumors in his first 2 weeks that Trump was ready to dump him because he and Elon Musk would get into it all the time. And, Rubio's switched teams quite a bit. And that's also a euphemism, if you like, as well. Stories that I've heard,
about Marco?
Little Marco, apparently. Yeah, apparently.
Little Marco.
Marco, yeah. He's, Anyway, I don't want to, it's not my business, but I will say there's a couple things that I found interesting. One, to your point, Waltz, not Hegseth, right?
Yeah.
But the problem there with getting rid of Pete Hegseth is that's like a nuclear admission of I shouldn't have hired the drunk weekend announcer at Fox. You know what I mean? And then, so there's that. And then there's how do you get another one knowing the damage this dickhead is doing? How do you get another one through the nomination process if you remove him? Because that's a whole other thing. You don't need a nomination process to be the head of national security or the senior national security. But do you really?
You do need one if you're going to be the UN ambassador, that's for sure. And you do need one for the NSA, but you won't have to do another one, I think, because he's already the Secretary of State.
Correct.
But Waltz does have to go through another confirmation hearing.
Oh, does he really?
He will have to answer
that's awesome.
to all the Signal Gate stuff in front of every senator in the U.S. Senate, which is going to be kind of fun to watch because
that'll be great. because you can
You know,
learn
how,
from it.
yeah, it's gonna be funny. But other than that, I would feel get through. Who knows? But maybe you won't. But Marco, I think is safe. He doesn't have to go through another one.
Well, and here's the other thing.
Yeah.
The reason why he gave Marco that position, same reason why he recycled Waltz, same reason why he's got Marco doing like 2 jobs for the price of one, same reason why he hasn't removed Hegseth. And I'll liken it to this. When I was younger, I refused to hang out with guys that were better looking than me. He was like, I gotta have uglier friends than I am.
Really?
Yeah. Because you go to the mall, you increase your chances of looking better than everybody
Oh, I see.
else. More
Yeah.
women would look at you, or young girls at the time would look at you. And it was always this thing in the back of my head. And when I think about what Trump is doing right now, I think of that analogy. It's one thing to surround yourself with really smart people like, General Kelly, or anybody that hated him from his first administration because they all made him look bad. Because
Yeah.
they're like, he's an idiot. We know he's a fucking idiot. He's on stage talking about UV lights and, what do you call those things? Colonics that cure you with coffee. And he's literally like embarrassed himself all the time because you put Donald Trump next to someone who's actually smart, who can deliver a message, who can problem solve, in real time, who can put square pegs in square holes. He looks like a fucking moron, which is
Mhm.
why he doesn't want to have anything to do with Mark Carney on a public platform, right? He doesn't
Right.
any leader that he meets, he doesn't want to have anything to do with them if they're smarter than him, if they align with his values, sure. But, outside of that, he can't surround himself with anybody who looks better than him or makes him look bad. And it's
Right.
kind of the same thing, right? It's why his universe is so small, why he's got this small little cabal of loyalists who is like, I'm just going to surround myself with people who are far dumber than I am. They all look better than him because it's all out of central casting.
Yeah.
But he's also hired dumber people than him, or people who are way more unqualified, which is saying something, way more unqualified to do the job he gave them than he is qualified to do the job of president. So he continually looks like, he might be in charge
So
when,
it's the exact.
smarter people know
Yeah.
different.
It's the exact opposite of hired people who are smarter than you. It's the exact
Bingo.
the flip side of that is a
Yeah.
hire. Okay, I got it now.
You got it.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It sounds exactly what they're doing.
It's exactly what they're doing. I wished I wasn't right all the time, but I'm right all the time.
You're
And
right.
I'm super right about this.
You're right. You're definitely not wrong about this one. So number 4. Can we move on to number 4?
I'd love to.
So a federal judge, not just any federal judge, a Trump-appointed federal judge, Judge Rodriguez, has permanently blocked the deportation of these Venezuelan immigrants who are being held in those not very good conditions. It's a landmark ruling which prevents the use of the 798 wartime law, the Aliens Act, whatever it was called, to deport migrants without due process. And it comes just the day after I don't know if you saw that picture I posted earlier on narrative.org, the SOS. That
Yeah.
these guys, it's the only way they can communicate to the outside world was to use their bodies to form the words or the letters SOS. And they were captured by a Reuters drone, which then circulated the picture around the world. Well, the day after that, we now have this landmark ruling and a judge blocking any use of the Alien Enemies Act for deporting these guys. This is a very significant pushback against the administration. It's probably the most significant loss up until now on the immigration process. It's a big win, and it's great that it's a Trump-appointed judge. Of course, it'll get appealed up the wazoo here, but it's still a moment of reprieve for the Venezuelan immigrants who are being held in those conditions that are really kind of awful. We were hearing very limited access to lawyers or any sort of access to the outside world, very limited sanitation facilities, not the kind of place you want to be spending any time at all. And they're going to be stuck there in a little bit of a legal limbo for now, it seems.
Yeah, it was a wild picture. If you saw it, and you can go to Zeb's narrative account, narrative.org here on Substack, and check it out. It's a great story. He did an awesome job writing it. The scene of the SOS signing was Bluebonnet Detention Facility. A bunch of Venezuelans, sort of at the center of that U.S. Supreme Court ruling. They're being held in Anson, Texas, this disgusting facility that is so fucking hot, no air conditioning. They get 2 meals a day. It's like bread and gruel. That's pretty much it. They're mistreated. These people were legally in the United States, most of them, some of them not legally in the United States, but no due process, no anything. And they were taken away from their families and their lifestyle where they got televisions and beds, and they were literally hustled into this, for lack of a better term, working camp. And we know what working camps are because we've got a lot of history with those. But it was amazing. They, like you said, all outside the detention center with their bodies used, their ability to put SOS on the ground because there was a drone just above that belonged to Reuters. And that 31 men formed that letter in the dirt in the facility on Monday. Now, apparently, 10 days earlier, some of these Venezuelan detainees at the center were given notices by immigration officials that allegedly they were members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. Never heard of it. And the subject of deportation under wartime laws, all of the detainees and their families refused to sign a letter that said, yeah, we're gang members. They all said, no, we're not gang members at all.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Some of us might be here legally. Lots of us are here legally, and some of us might have criminal records, but we don't belong to any of those gangs. We're here legally. We want due process. And hours later, didn't matter. April 18th, they were loaded onto a bus bound for Abilene Regional Airport. The ACLU and some family members actually, a little bit of a lawsuit. They pulled those people back, and they've been in this detention center ever since, boiling their balls off. Pardon the French. But bottom line is that this order that came down from this judge in this case was shocking. And now you've got the Trump administration, like Stephen Miller was mouthing off about it today, because the whole goal for these guys is to get past the judiciary, to move them aside. They're like, not only does it not matter, these are radical judges that are ruling against a sitting president's wishes to clean up the country, which is how they're saying it. But it was one of the more damning visuals we've seen. And even the White House put out a note saying what people failed to realize is that a lot of those people were in jail and Biden let them out of jail and we had to put them back in jail, which is totally
nonsense.
A fucking lie.
Such complete nonsense. This is a Supreme Court ruling that came down late on a Saturday night a few weeks ago that basically saved these guys from going to the much worse facility in El Salvador. So they that's where they were heading. And this federal ruling today is a response to that Supreme Court, pushing it back down to the lower court. So maybe the appeals may not even happen. Maybe this is the final decision. Now thinking about it, if the Supreme Court has already ruled, but it certainly is a permanent block against them being deported. Now, they could still be deported in other ways through the legal process of deportation, and others can still be done that way. But under the Aliens Enemies Act, which basically, has declared this particular gang a enemy invader, which is not really an enemy. It's not that. It's just a gang. So they've been declared that, and that's why these people could be deported based on the suspicion that they are members of this gang. As one of these pictures that I posted, there's some of these guys have their hands up in the air, and you can see some of the tattoos. I read analysis that some of those tattoos are like Pikachu, but nevertheless, because it's
from Pokemon,
But that's apparently
maybe Pikachu is an MS-13 member in the cartoon world.
Who knows? Maybe that's what they're saying. I mean, this is how stupid it is that you've got basically a tattoo and you're an illegal immigrant. You're basically considered a mobster.
Yeah.
These guys have kids and families, and they're like, this is insane. They're not getting any due process, getting pulled out of their homes in the middle of the night. Sometimes citizens are getting pulled out of the night.
I was thinking about that visual. And I was thinking about that, like, looking at those guys, because the video is really incredible, right? They see that the drone can see them, so they start waving, they break up the SOS.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those guys look pretty clean cut. A lot of them look, most of them are in shape, pretty clean cut. They've got a couple of soccer balls lying around, and I'm like, can you imagine going from a gig that pays you $130,000 a year, you got a family, you got a car, you might have an ATV, maybe a little boat, you like to go fishing on the weekend. You get family movie nights. Your kids are 13, 16, and 19, and you and the wife are, enjoying a glass of wine, and you've enjoyed this beautiful life. And the next thing you know, you find yourself in a prison detention center with no due process, no civil rights, nothing. And you're behind not one but two barbed wire fences for committing the crime of being Mexican, being from Venezuela, being from El Salvador, committing a crime 15 years ago. Like, can you imagine the change in circumstances and how desperate you'd be as a human being at that point?
And the threat that you might be going to an even worse facility where there's no way out. You might forever be in El Salvador at CCOT, stuck and never come out of there at all. Not being able to reach your lawyers, not being able to have any real due process, even if you could reach your lawyers, you're just sort of stuck there. Not being able to communicate with the outside world, having this awful, food that they have there, and then you're resorting to spelling out SOS. As you see a drone flying above, just to get the message out to the world that your life is in distress. This is America in 2025. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Number 3 on the countdown today is the White House is launching a propaganda wire service because it doesn't like traditional media at all. So it's setting up its own wh.gov/wire. Check it out if you want. It resembles the Drudge Report, apparently, but exclusively features positive coverage of Donald Trump.
Exclusively positive coverage, by the way. And it looks exactly like the Drudge Report. I saw it this morning. Exactly.
The site launched amid an ongoing battle to exclude Associated Press from the White House access, and critics claim it's an unprecedented use of federal resources for partisan news curation. Really? If you're looking for all those dominoes to fall in the road to a total authoritarian state, this is another domino because that's what happens when they start having their own state-run news services. It's a domino that you're falling into a dictatorship, and it's something to take quite seriously, of course, that they're doing this. The administration describes it as a place for supporters of the president's agenda to get the real news.
When they bogey or co-opt words like woke or the real news, I laugh harder every fucking time. And listen, you might not like information that some people do. You might be a Fox person. You might be, by the way, if you are, you're probably dumb. You might be, a CNN person. You might be, an MSNBC person. But I come from a time where you could sit back, take in information and agree with it or disagree with it in your mind and be able to enjoy the program, right? Be able to, I don't agree with that. I didn't agree. Oh, that's interesting. They're doing that. This is the opposite of all of that. When Donald Trump decides to start his own wire service, which again looks exactly like the Drudge Report, exactly, he's doing it to trick people into thinking that he's going to give you the real news, and that real news looks like other real news outlets. Same way you can retruth something, same way you can go on Truth social media. They'll capture the attention of the idiot squad with words like truth, real news, transparency, truth seeker, and they'll attach it to a traditional medium or like a social media medium, and then they'll tell all their supporters it's just us against the world, right? This is where you're going to get the real news, just us against the world. And all those morons will be like, yeah, I'm totally in, because you're either looking for one of two things if you're consuming content: information or affirmation. A Trump fan is never looking for information. They're looking for information that feeds their bias, which is just affirmation. So anything that Donald Trump co-signs in terms of media, any outlet that gives him positive coverage, any outlet that he owns, any social media platform that he's involved in, exists for one reason and one reason only. It's to melt your fucking brain with lies. Like, that is the only reason it exists. It's to tell you that the sim you're living in is his sim. There's no reason to look anywhere else. Everybody else is corrupt. Go back to the Terry Moran interview, by the way. Everything that he says when it comes to what he wants you to think is real is a lie. He's a walking, talking, living, breathing, absolute compulsive liar. And all that wire service, that whitehouse.gov wire service that looks exactly like the Drudge Report. All it is his way of convincing you or his followers that all the terrible things that he's doing don't really matter. He's not doing them. You can't trust literally everybody else. You can only trust me. So just read this.
You're so right. Well done. That's a very, very good analysis. And I think, when you're looking at the kind of stuff that North Korea does with their media, you look at the kind of stuff any of these dictatorships do, and you looked at what Hungary did the minute Orban came to power, consolidating all the independent news organizations.
Exact same.
What they're doing now with CBS, we covered this last week, or maybe it was even this week, about the 60 Minutes lawsuit and the resignation of Bill Owens. you're seeing what they're doing. It's a coordinated attempt to really censor every bit of media out there. And then on top of it, now they're putting out their own news service because, they alone can discern what is news, of course, not anybody else. It's alarming. And as a journalist, it's really threatening the foundation of democracy, because if this gets worse, and it will get worse. I mean, you can almost predict it will get worse. The democracy only survives if we can get the truth to people. If you don't get the truth to people, democracy doesn't survive. You get a dictatorship. There's no other way around that. So how we get truthful information, accurate reporting to people, even in a world where we have the internet, but because the internet is so controlled and monitored these days, it's scary to think about what 6 months down the line, a year down the line is going to look like.
Yeah.
With all these, state institutions, these corporations, all of them bearing down on newsrooms not to report things that are negative. And I'm just thinking to myself, if I had a big story in a CBS newsroom that was critical of the administration, would I even want to pitch it to my news editors because they won't like it? It'll look bad on me. It might kill my career. I might get fired. So why go after those stories? That's the kind of the self-censorship that happens when you get this kind of environment. It's more than just a chill. It really is. Do I bother, or should I just, call in every day, do this stupid story that they want me to about whatever, and go home, take my paycheck? Because that's the easier way out of it, and certainly the easier route. So you're going to, it's going to be some principled journalists that are still pushing for stories that they really want. But for the most part, you got to believe that those stories are going to get buried and watered down all the time. Stories are going to get spiked, or stories are going to get just neutralized in the way people write them, as we've seen in other news organizations that become non-existent, really.
You're also going to get stories that are completely divorced from reality from that wire service. You're going to get stories like Trump tells on a daily basis, like, I did 200 deals with countries last week. He did 0. And people will be like, he did 200 deals. It's like, and everybody else will be saying no, but they're not looking at everybody else. They're only reading this from this guy. Or like, any one of the tremendous lies. MS-13, Abrego Garcia. Like those aren't. That's not Photoshop. That's real. Trust me. And being able to co-op WhiteHouse.gov or the White House logo, really, there is part of the idea that lives on the alt-right is we can lie with impunity if we can co-opt said logo of said organization or said government interest or said government department. We can literally stamp that on something because people are so conditioned to believe CNN, so conditioned to believe AP, so conditioned to believe certain wire services, the government seal, the presidential seal. We're so conditioned to believing those things as the definitive arbiter of whatever information is being discussed at the time, that we live in a time that we've never lived in before. Sure, the government's lied and put out memos that have been untrue, but this is really fucking different and not just dangerous, but it is so pointless in some sense because the other day he put out a giant White House memo about how he was going to save water pressure in shower heads to make shower heads great again. And it had a fucking White House logo on it.
Yeah.
Like,
it's terrible what they're doing. And, no one's blocking the
legitimizing ridiculousnly and lies. Like, it's wild.
The WhiteHouse.gov is not something that any internet provider is going to be blocking for any good reason, because, it might be complete propaganda, but it's still the White House. You're not going to block them. So, people are still going to get that news, and it's going to get filtered through on a very high level just because of the domain name that it is.
Yeah, sure.
The number 2 story on the countdown today is the bird flu, the avian flu. This is a real crisis, and it's intensifying. Some virologists are sounding the pandemic alert around this. Leading virologists from over 40 countries have warned that H5N1, the bird flu, could reach a critical level soon. There's now evidence of this virus in all 50 states, with over 995 dairy herds and 70 humans infected. And there's been at least 1 death related to the avian flu. Experts concerned about virus mutations potentially enabling human-to-human transmission, of course, which if we're seeing, if we are having the deaths of an individual related to that, it's quite significant. And GVN scientists call for the urgent action enhanced surveillance, biosecurity, and vaccine deployment. Of course, none of this exists because Donald Trump has fired the pandemic defense part of the executive, which used to run under Joe Biden quite effectively. He's dismissed all the people who research a lot of the infectious diseases in the administration. We just found out last hour that he fired all the staff from the level 4 lab that deals with Ebola and other things. You've got a HHH secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is crazy and basically believes in non-scientific facts as facts. And so you got this incredible administration that used to be able to fight pandemics. It used to be able to fight infectious diseases. That was the world leader whenever something happened. They turned to America. Not only does it not exist right now, it appears that they're not even monitoring or releasing information around the avian flu.
No, they got rid of those departments too.
I've not seen a single update from the CDC saying there are avian flus out there. People be careful, take these precautions, whatever. None of it. The only information we're getting is from state level monitors or state level health officials
from blue states.
Or Harvard University puts out something. But this is not the kind of, if you've got a pandemic coming, as we've experienced in the recent past, you need complete knowledge of the entire situation. You need to be able to track all these. You remember with COVID, how we used to be able to track every single strain of COVID.
They got rid of those guys too.
Dude. How it got in, we used to be able to see it on a chart, and we'd be able to track every single point of entry and how these diseases mutated, and how none of that exists now for this avian flu, and it is spreading to every single U.S. state, which you've not heard about anywhere.
No, and it's a great point. But if you remember, I think it was about a month ago, Robert F. Kennedy, who the last time I watched a clip of him talked about, I've never seen any adult come down with autism. He's just the dumbest fucking guy on the planet. Or he's like, measles are no big deal. You gotta make an omelet, you crack a few eggs. Measles was gone for a long time, 100 years. Right? It was back with a vengeance. It's killing people.
Unbelievable that it's back.
And that was the whole point of getting rid of any of the people in HHS that are following or documenting any kind of pandemic or any kind of flu or any kind of virus, any viral loads, any of the stuff that we talk about all the time, being aware of where certain hotspots are. And they tried to hire about, 3,000 of those people back, if you remember correctly, and they couldn't. And the Trump administration said they saved $1 billion, but really what they did was they got rid of any measure, any regulatory individual that had the ability to save the agriculture industry because of bird flu. Same thing when it came to any kind of human transmission. They got rid of the communications department in and around scientists that were trying to figure out and track what's going on with the bird flu, what's going on with COVID, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And his excuse for it, if you remember correctly, he's like, pandemic's over, it's time to move on, everybody needs to be free. And this is why they did it. Because the Trump administration, when they got into office, were warned by the Biden administration, you're going to be dealing with the bird flu. It could be a pandemic. And they're like, yeah. Just go ahead and leave us the file on the desk. And they turned around, dropped the file in the garbage, and then fired everybody because they didn't want to be known as the administration or the regime that presided over COVID, which killed an inordinate amount of Americans. Millions died that didn't need to. They didn't want to follow it up by being known as the people who led the charge killing other people with the bird flu. So what better way to get rid of that than to say, listen, we need to shave a few, population numbers off the top. I don't really give a shit if anybody dies as long as we're protected. We don't want anybody talking out of turn about this bird flu thing that's coming in, which is going to kill a whole bunch of poultry, a whole bunch of animals, and a whole bunch of people who are already sick. Right? It's very not dissimilar to COVID that way. If you know anything about bird flu, avian flu, it goes after the most vulnerable. And so, they're staring down the barrel of having to preside over another pandemic, the second in 10 years. And instead of doing something about it, like ringing alarm bells, increasing awareness campaigns, screening, vetting, any additional measures, they're like, we're not interested in any of that. We'll let, the people die who are going to die. We'll sacrifice some cows and some livestock and some farms and whatever. But we just don't want to wear this one. And it's standing in keeping with Project 2025, which said they were going to get rid of anybody that tracked anything to do with science, anybody who was science-y, all the communications departments that had anything to do with communicating what was going on with science and with human beings who suffered the risk of going through another pandemic. It's literally in the document. This is what America voted for, and this is what they got. And now all 50 states are fucked with the bird flu. Livestock, poultry, you're going to see prices go through the roof on top of
Yeah,
people
eggs
like
and
your
chicken.
neighbors
Yeah.
dying. Yeah, absolutely.
That's very generous of you to say that they're just wanting to not get the stain on them, because the reality of it is, and I think I've done enough research into what happened in COVID and broke the story about how the Trump administration really spent 21 days basically doing nothing while COVID came into America. They allowed it into America. They allowed it to spread in America so it could reach the pandemic levels that it did. And you might say that's just, incompetence. It could have been just incompetence. But now they're doing the same thing. So how likely was it that incompetence, or are they just basically allowing these diseases in so our foreign adversaries can basically seed viruses into America, cause economic decay, kill people, hurt our economic growth, hurt our population growth, basically really, really damage America on a bio warfare kind of level, by just simply not monitoring the floodgates, not monitoring when avian flu hits the ground in America. And just by letting it spread in those 21 days, by the way, when Donald Trump first let COVID into America, it could have been stopped. It absolutely could have been stopped. Had there been a pandemic, it could have been stopped.
Think so? I don't think anything.
Had the pandemic office not been shut down by Trump, had the Obama pandemic office been there, and had the right steps been taken in Wuhan, which they weren't, but ultimately Wuhan turned out to be a bit of a interesting case where it just was concentrated in Wuhan, the outbreak, and then spread around the world. Very unusual that it came from Wuhan and then just spread around the world. I can go into this on a much larger scale. People always,
yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd love talking about COVID.
But truthfully, it's very hard for me to see a situation where Donald Trump is thinking either about anything other than money in this case, which might be about vaccines or about, how he can profit off these deaths. He certainly doesn't care about the people. He certainly is not out there thinking about, well, how can I protect Americans from dying? He might be thinking, like Jared Kushner did, how can I buy these people's properties when they die so I can turn them into, nicer neighborhoods and I resell them at higher prices? That's what Jared Kushner did. Or Jared Kushner also thought about, well, let me send COVID to the blue states because, hey, if we kill more Democrats, it's better for us. This is the kind of, evil, contemptuous, disgusting thinking that comes out of this administration. And it's not going to surprise me one bit if we find out at some point that the any attempts to shut down avian flu or to stop the spread were actually stopped by RFK, that the pandemic office firing and any other attempts by any of the CDC or any other NIH officials to actually do their job were probably shut down completely by RFK, which was, we're hearing reports of already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I bet you everybody's real comfortable with the idea that RFK is the HHS director, huh? Probably today. Well, hearing you read that story, when I read it today, I'm like, they're fucked. Like, they don't have a Fauci. They don't have anybody serious in any serious position to be able to make any kind of serious decision to stop the avian flu from becoming a fucking pandemic at this point.
There are really good state level officials that do health, and they will be the ones who will carry the mantle, but it's not the same because you really have to focus on these things on a national basis in order to fight them. If it's a national pandemic and it's going to stop people from crossing states, it's really a problem. It also
states don't have states relied on that federal response to back up the state response to communicate globally, or not globally, but across the United States as well. So that federal response isn't there, and that hinge of being able to share information and help where help was needed is gone because the federal government doesn't even acknowledge that it's a thing.
You know what also pandemics do? They will stop people from protesting. So the more of an outbreak there is around the world, the more people can't gather together. So they won't gather together. They'll be able to put a chill on the protests against what this administration is doing, along with all the other, factors like lack of food, lack of jobs, lack of everything that's going to be showing up on increased prices. This is the sort of summer we're facing. in America. It's another reason you got to be. I don't think this administration is beyond that, having a pandemic spread to quell protests. I don't.
No,
I
dude,
don't.
of course not.
Yeah,
No. There's some of the stuff that you were you're wondering about. I wouldn't agree with. About the intentionality of just swinging the Bombay doors open and saying, "Come on in, COVID, it's okay." I don't know that that's necessarily the case, but I certainly know that they didn't give two shits who lived or who died because they found a way to profit off of it and they found a way to benefit from it. And I believe it's probably exactly the same condition here. Donald Trump is not a moral character, and neither are the people he surround himself with. So when you give him potential, numbers of fatalities over let's say a 1 year period from the bird flu, and he looks at it and he's like, do I know any of these people and do they owe me money? No. Well, then fuck them. I don't care. Because that means none of those people can show up and protest.
Jeannie's has to go off to her protest. Good job, Jeannie.
You had a girl. Jeannie, you get going.
I'm impressed that people are protesting today, and people should continue to protest. It's the only way out of this crisis. Sorry to interrupt you there. Story number one, and we only have a few minutes to do this. This is a huge story that only you picked up on today at deanblundell.substack.com, which is that Russia is announcing a mass mobilization, or potential mass mobilization, readiness for a World War III at any moment. Now, they didn't say World War III. They just said that they were ready for a mobilization like World War II. So that sort of indicates something like World War III. This was done by Peskov at his preparation for Victory Day, which is the day that Russians celebrate their victory over the Nazis. And so tell us more about this. You know about the story.
Yeah, it was interesting because it floated by and I was like, okay, I'll read it. Right. Anytime you see the words mass mobilization, just like World War II, prepared for anything at any moment. That's exactly what Dmitry Peskov, who's the spokesperson for Vladimir Putin, said at a meeting of the General Assembly in Russia yesterday, which is Victory Day. To your point, it's Russia over Germany, blah 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 blah. So they celebrate every year with a big military parade. Where this year they hauled out some old relics because all their good shit's gone, or it's in action in Ukraine, getting bombarded by Ukrainian drones, which is fun. And may I remind Ukraine, there's a whole bunch of military equipment in Red Square right now. If you want to take it all out with one nice shot, there's this great opportunity for you. But it was interesting because when I read it, I thought to myself, I put things together from other aspects of stories and rhetoric, right? Whether it's, Dugin yesterday saying, hey, Trump, you got to invade Canada. Prepare for war. Let's go. They're just Ukrainians. Canadians are Ukrainians. So go after them and take it over. It's a death cult. And then, a day later, you've got Peskov going, yeah, we're preparing. We're preparing for a world war event at any moment, at any time. 160,000 people we've conscripted, and you don't have to be a fearmonger to look at this in one of two ways. A, it's rhetoric. Russia's like a 2 dressed like a 9. There's no way they're going to invade because they're effectively bankrupt. Their sovereign wealth fund is disappeared. Their war fund is disappeared. They're taking handouts from North Korea and China, of all places. They're taking handouts from Iran, of all places, at this point in time. So you weigh, common sense and Russia's current position against Peskov's statements and Dugin's statements going, listen, you're preparing for war, but with fucking what? Like, you got nothing. You got no equipment. You got no people. You're literally dragging guys out of their house in front of their parents at this point, sending them into the meat grinder, and you're going to prepare for war against the European Union. So, but then again, you consider the fact that they promised they were going to not invade Crimea, and they were just putting people up on the border for training exercises. And sure enough, they went and invaded Crimea, walked into it. Think about February 3 years ago when they just invaded every airport in the Ukraine and tried to take it in 3 days. It was one of the most surreal experiences I've ever seen. So you can't really count them out. No. But it was concerning, right? It was very concerning. The drumbeats of war coming out of Russia when it comes to any allied nation that isn't aligned with Russia and Trump is escalating at a point, and the right people are saying it where I think it needs to be on people's radar at some point.
Yeah, and it's not the first time that Peskov has been talking about World War III. He's been talking about it a lot. You remember Donald Trump also mentioned World War III when he was with Zelensky a while ago. So, it's not unusual to hear them talk about this. What's unusual is that they are talking about the numbers that they're talking about, like pulling up, a huge 20 million people or something like that. I don't know how they
Yeah.
could. It's almost everybody you think of serving age, or then some. They're already lost 1 million troops. I mean, they've already down 1 million troops in Ukraine. It's not like they have you would think their standing army is heavily depleted, but
Yeah.
it's not. And this saber rattling, it's exactly the kind of thing you get to hear. We all were fearful of that if Ukraine falls, and if Ukraine is somehow gets into Russian hands, the next thing is Lithuania, the next thing is Poland, and then you're in a world war, because that's when NATO gets called in. That's when the European nations get called in, and you're in a very desperate situation. Then, plus, then you open up all these other fronts potentially in Canada. Who would have thought that as a potential front? Anywhere else could also open up as a front. We're looking at what's happening now with India and Pakistan. You look at what's happening, all these areas that are sort of boiling over. They could boil over in these
Yeah.
situations, and then you get into a real crisis. So we're used to Putin and we're used to Russia doing a lot of bragging about shit and threatening about shit, and we just don't believe them all the time. And we shouldn't believe this either as anything other than just bravado. But it would be, it would be malpractice if we weren't prepared for it.
Yeah, it
And
would
we
be.
were, yeah.
It would be. It would be. And it's I think everybody's kind of on heightened alert, right? Because you watched them invade Ukraine, which was unbelievable when they did it. You're like, this can't be happening. They're invading another sovereign country like in 2023 or whatever it was. And to your point, Peskov and I think Lavrov said they'd probably conscript or mobilize 20 to 25 million people. Russia's population is 143, so that's 25% of their population they're planning on mobilizing. That's going to be hard to do. So,
Well,
you
it's
can look
Russia,
at that and you can go,
they
"Oh
just
wow,
go
you're going to conscript." Well, I mean, it's like me saying I'm going to give you 100 billion trillion gazillion dollars. That's kind of
right.
where that lies. So, and speaking of lies, it's all that comes out of that regime, right? It's just like everything's a fucking lie. So just
Yeah.
like Trump, they're run by the same people, the same stuff. They tell you these wacky stories like Trump. I got 200 deals signed with countries. He had zero. There's only 195 countries in the world, and you're like, wait a second, a little critical thought. That's impossible. Same thing with this whole Russia thing, but be aware because there are real signs. Like they're expanding this air base around the Finnish
Mhm.
border. Russia is, and there's a big troop buildup in that region. Same with Belarus. There's a big troop buildup in Belarus. Reports of more than 10,000 North Koreans coming in to help in Ukraine. Reports of Chinese servicemen and women helping out in Ukraine and also in Kursk. So the things you don't hear. I mean, the rhetoric is something, but those troops will come from somewhere because, a lot of these guys are in for a penny, in for a pound, and they're like, and Russia's fucked. They're so pot committed to this thing that any effort to look like they're trying to get out from underneath it, or
Mm.
any effort to try to get out from underneath the disaster they're facing in Ukraine, which
Mm.
Trump is also facing, even though they signed that minerals deal today, which
Yeah.
really was just a stupid piece of paper that that he really
It
wanted
was
to
an
get
interesting
signed. That
deal,
means
wasn't
nothing.
it?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was so dumb. But I mean, it's look for more rhetoric, but I don't. Where there's smoke, there's fire. So be careful,
I
everybody.
mean, the world's a very
'cause,
dangerous place right now, obviously. So anything could happen at any time. But that's why we need to keep our support of Ukraine up. That's why we need to make sure that the Ukrainians continue their incredible war effort. I mean, it's kind of amazing how they're
they're
holding
awesome.
back the Russians. I mean, it's
Oh,
every time the Russians feel like they might, gain an inch, the Ukrainians just take back so much more, and it's very impressive to see their resolve this many years later. It's still in this war, especially with the United States not being there in the way that they used to. So
they'll win, dude. Ukraine is going to win. Ukraine will win that war. The West will win that war with Ukraine. Ukraine will be their own sovereign country. Trump will lose. Russia's going to lose. Mark my words. Mark my words.
no,
And listen. Be
I believe
diligent.
you.
Support the right people, the right causes. But I am of the firm opinion that the right thing will always be the right thing, and the right thing will always win. It might take time. It might be an uphill battle at times. It might look like you lost, but I'm telling you, the people of Ukraine, with sticks and arrows, rocks, now drones, ladies cooking rat poison infested cakes, have decimated Russia. They have killed or maimed over 1 million Russians. Like the ratio is something like or 6 to 1.
Yeah.
With ingenuity, with strength, with courage, in the face of can you imagine being there? My buddy Alex was there, and I'll log off as soon as we're done. I know we both got to go, but
Mm.
in the face of jets flying overhead, and imagine this, I'm in Toronto at Pearson Airport. Imagine, jets flying overhead, them attacking the airport, and 3 days later they're gone. A week later they're gone, and 3 years later you've gotten rid of over 1 million of them with bare bones technology, by putting shotguns on drones, thermite on drones, going, what
Yeah,
else can we
amazing.
do with the drone? And they're winning, and they will win. And I can guarantee you, when this is over, Ukraine will be a sovereign country, and Russia will be decimated. That imperial country will be decimated because it needs to be.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on all of that, and well said. That's really beautiful imagery you have there, and absolutely correct. I think at the end of the day, this is the battle between the light and the dark, lightness and darkness, whatever you want to call it. It certainly is going to be, it's one for the ages. There's no doubt about it. This is something we've not seen in a long, long time. But lightness is going to win. The light's going to win it. You got to believe that. You got to believe that. That is the FiveStack today. Check out deanblundell.substack.com for his excellent Substack. Lots of great stories there, including the full write-up on this World War III comment by Peskov. He breaks it down in really interesting ways. So everyone should check out the Substack for that. And you can check out my reporting at narrative.org, where I have that picture of the SOS that the Venezuelan immigrants have.
That's a great piece.
Spelled out, yeah. So there's a lot of good news for you to check out on both of our Substacks. We will not see. Oh, we are going to see you tomorrow. Are we seeing people?
Of course, dude. Do you not remember
Friday,
who we have on the show tomorrow?
Yes, we're doing a special edition tomorrow.
Yeah, Lev Parnas.
Wow.
Former Trumper. Lev Parnas.
I have questions. I have so many questions for Lev. Zev and Lev. It even sounds so. I've got so many things.
Zev and Lev. I didn't even think about it. Is he Jewish as well? Is Lev Parnas Jewish?
I think he is. I think he's part of that Ukrainian, chief rabbi crew that was hanging out with Rudy way back when.
I got lots of questions about Rudy. I got questions about Ukraine. I got questions about Trump. I got questions about Musk. I got mostly about Rudy. And one of the questions I want to ask him, I think, is going to be really fun. So I don't want anybody to miss it.
So we're going to do a full FiveStack, or are we just going to do it?
It's a special FiveStack feature is what it is. We might not have 5 of anything. It just might be us with him for an hour going, hey, what does Rudy Giuliani smell like?
What's happened to Rudy lately? Where is Rudy? We haven't seen his appearance
he's living off the Trump teat down in Mar-a-Lago. He's got an apartment there. And
really?
He's not allowed to have
Trump
a bank
retirement
account.
home.
Yeah, we'll find out from him. We'll find out how Rudy's doing. How's he making it work with nothing? It's great.
I mean, apparently he can if you're part of the mega world. So we'll see. But I'm looking forward to a conversation with
tomorrow,
Lev.
3:00.
It's terrific. Yeah, awesome stuff. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.